All right, so welcome everybody. Welcome to Captain's Table. I'm Tony Hall. For those of you that haven't met, we've got people that have joined us from far and wide. We've even got some New Zealand guests today, which is fantastic. So thanks to everyone for being here at Captain's Table. I run Navigator Consulting, and we put on Captain's Table and Consultants Table, and you might see Karen there on your screen, who is running Consultants Table for us tomorrow. And she's running a very innovative session on what you still don't know about LinkedIn. So brand new content and some really cutting edge ideas for you and your team. So it's not too late to book into that one if you haven't seen the link. My job is I sit on advisory boards mainly for small and medium-sized recruitment companies. I really enjoy helping to grow recruitment companies, having done it myself and advised tons of recruitment companies in the past. I really like the growth phase of a recruitment company and then building for exit or succession. So some of you I've met, some of you, thank you so much for continuing to support Captain's Table over the years. And those of you that are joining us for the first time, welcome to Captain's Table. We've got a really good lineup for you, and we've got something that's happening that I don't believe has really been done before, where we're going to be looking at the real state of the recruitment industry. And when we say the real state of the recruitment industry, everyone says, how's business? How's it going? And, oh, it's brilliant. Couldn't be better. Yes, you know, there's a shortage of talent, all that sort of stuff. But these people, these chaps that you're going to see today, they know intimately what's happening in the industry. Because as an industry supplier, you have multiple recruitment companies as clients. So you can see a much broader spread of what's happening in the market. You can see what's good, what's not, what's working, what's not. And they have a very, very unique perspective. And I would argue they probably have the best perspective of what's happening in the recruitment industry than anyone. They're across finance, they're across operations, they're across the whole gamut of what happens in a recruitment company, and they can combine their internal data to really give you some interesting insights, which are going to come out today on what is happening in the industry from their perspective, and you're going to find some very useful ideas today. So we've got 5 questions that I'm going to run each of our speakers through. I'm going to, in order, we've got Martin, Cameron, Danny, and Michael. I'm going to ask them to introduce themselves really briefly, and then quickly to go into the first question, which is around what do they perceive happening in the broader Australian economy, and then what's happening in the recruitment industry, and then we'll sequence to questions from them. All right, everyone good? So Martin, we're going to start with you. Quick intro, and then economy and the recruitment industry. Thank you very much for our panel. And I forgot to say, our panel today have supported Captain's Table pretty much since the inception 3 years ago of this version of Captain's Table, the online version. And thank you very much for all of you for all your support of Captain's Table, and looking forward to hearing from you today. So sorry, Martin, over to you.
Yeah, it's great to be here, Tony. Thanks again for having me. We were just talking a little bit before that we kicked off the meeting that I've been now at JobAdder for about 15 months, and it depends on how I look at it. It's either it feels like it's been much longer, given how much has happened in the last 15 months and joining a company like, after lockdowns. In some ways, it's just flying right by, but really like just very unique times. I think the timing of this webinar, this session actually is really good and timely given the content, because we are going to be coming out tomorrow actually with call it global industry report that covers the recruitment and talent acquisition industry. And so we've been doing this for over a year now, just every quarter, actually compiling a lot of the data that we get across, nearly 4,000 accounts across JobAdder, mostly on the agency side, but we're actually covering the in-house side as well. We've got about 2,000 or so accounts just in Australia and New Zealand. So we've aggregated that data just to look at what the trends are when it comes to actually demand in terms of number of jobs that are being created, in terms of the actual supply on the candidate side, when it comes to the actual applications per job, et cetera. So I don't have probably a good comment in terms of the overall economy, I think, but I do have lots of good data specifically about recruitment. And what I can share, I think, just to kick things off, because I think it is a fairly good sample base and good representation of what's happening more broadly is that, so we've seen essentially just a steady climb in the number of jobs created per account. What we look at is actually number of jobs created per JobAdder account from quarter to quarter. And it's, you know, we don't have the history going back years and years, but our thinking is that this is probably hitting all-time peaks. We've got jobs created per account in a 54 basically in Australia, close to that in New Zealand, and that's growth year over year. I think for Australia, it's about 54% growth year over year when you compare it to Q3 of last year, which makes a lot of sense post-lockdown, and steady sort of increases from quarter to quarter. And then even New Zealand, you mentioned a couple of New Zealand folks here. I see our own Rich Bailey here as well. 78%, I think, year over year. So lots of growth in terms of demand for jobs, for roles coming from companies, both on the temp and the permanent side. Now that's the good news, right? That's a great, you know, challenge and opportunity. Of course, I think this is not a surprise. And then say on the flip side of that, we've seen a massive decline in terms of the number of applications per job. So applications per job, again, if you think about, like, you know, in terms of looking over the last 5 quarters, so year over year, we had, for instance, in Australia, about 34 applications per job, again, per, you know, across all the different accounts. And this has dropped essentially by half. So we're just not getting the candidates coming into the jobs, dropped to about 16. So a big candidate shortage, you know, call it what you will. I've heard lots of different expressions from it. I think my favorite one so far is a candemic. But it's a massive talent shortage. And we can talk more about how recruitment firms are navigating this, and, like, you know, what are the better ones doing. I think some of the tactics they're using. I would say the last point to maybe add before, you know, hand it over as well is in terms of the segments that are doing fairly well. If you dive deeper into the data across the industry, again, I don't think this is going to be a surprise, but temp is doing well overall. Industries like supply chain, IT, particularly driven by digital transformation, cybersecurity, anything in healthcare, HR, agriculture. Permanent roles also doing quite well as well. When we break that down, we'll share some of that tomorrow. But of course, the flip side of that is actually holding on to candidates or people, and then you know, dealing with counteroffers, et cetera. And what's not doing so well, and this is both just because of COVID-related economic impact. Again, probably not a surprise, but it's retail, it's hospitality, it's leisure. And again, you've got a bit of a double whammy there, because not only is it some of those industries who are suffering and sort of probably hesitant to potentially hire, but then candidates who are not really you know, keen about getting into those industries because of what's going on with COVID and all the lockdowns and coming in and out of those. So more to share, but I'll leave it.
No, that's excellent, Martin. Thank you very much, and very useful information. Now, Cameron, over to you. Brief intro, and then your view, which may match with what Martin's saying, but you'll have some additional ideas too, I'm sure.
Yeah, great. Thanks, Tony. Thanks for having us. And for anyone I haven't met before, my name's Cameron Martin. I'm a director at William Buck. We're an accounting and advisory firm with offices all around Australia. And we help our sort of private family business clients with all sorts of accounting and tax advice, with a particular focus on being that trusted advisor and helping business owners meet their growth potential. We've got quite a lot of experience in the recruitment industry, and we can help people, or they've got the right numbers, they've got accurate numbers, and they've got those numbers up to date, and then, you know, potentially support them through the cycle that they're going through with their business, and helping them make those decisions that they need to make in their business. From what we're seeing, I'd agree with what Martin said. We're seeing across our client base in the recruitment industry, when we're talking to owners at the moment, that they're having record months through July, August, September. And that seems to be continuing to be strong. So that sort of data point in terms of jobs, that correlates with some of the stuff that we're seeing. And particularly in some of those businesses in states like New South Wales, where they've been locked down, and they've got government support because maybe they initially in that sort of early July period in New South Wales and particularly struggled, and so they had a downturn, and so they're eligible for some of the government support. But then because that government support came through, that a lot of confidence came back into the economy, into those sectors, and so they were able to very quickly jump back. So we're seeing businesses that maybe had a 2 or 3 week decline very sharply then improved, but when you add in some of this government support, their financial results have been extremely strong. Some of these businesses have never had as much cash in their business that they've ever had in their lives, in terms of the life cycle of the business. Some of the banking people we're talking to, and I'm sure the APositive guys will talk about this too, is that people aren't using the finance as much as they used to for their temp and contracting businesses, because there is just so much profit and so much activity around that there's just money flowing around, I suppose. So, you know, I think for the industry and where we're seeing the recruitment industry at the moment, it's really strong. You know, people are struggling to find good quality candidates themselves. They're having to then fall back on to recruiters to help them do that. And I don't think that's going to change anytime soon. So, you know, business owners that, or businesses that may not have used recruiters in the past or may not have used them to the same degree are using them more. And that they just can't find people themselves, and so that's happening. And we'd agree that that's comments we're seeing too. That what Martin mentioned before was that the number of candidates applying for jobs is way down, but it's easier. It's a bit, in some respects, similar to what the real estate market has been, in that you put a house up for sale as a real estate agent. If it's in a good area, it's basically going to sell itself. And in recruitment at the moment, to some degree, that is, once you find those candidates, basically there is jobs for them. So it's the candidate sourcing, which is the hard part. Finding jobs for a good candidate isn't a problem at all. And so, yeah, that economic activity we see overall in the economy across our whole client base, but in particular recruitment, it is hitting a sweet spot. And potentially, you know, you're going to see some results coming through this financial year that we've never seen before. So that's sort of my comments, Tony.
No, really good. Thank you very much, Cameron. Excellent. Danny, you're up next. Again, very unique perspective on the marketplace. Keen to hear from you.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thanks very much for having us again, Tony. So, yeah, Danny Marlow, for anyone I haven't met, co-founder and CEO of APositive. We specialise in workforce finance, so funding, recruitment and labour hire businesses, and we've got products for both perm and temp. So I guess sharing the optimism and I guess the improvement on the temp side with Cameron and Martin. Our temp sales are up 100% from the same quarter last year. So massive increase. And that's, I mean, put that in, I guess, relative to the number of clients, that's only including an extra 30% uplift on the actual number of clients. So the actual activity levels have definitely skyrocketed on the temp side. I guess bringing a different and unique perspective to the conversation from the economy's perspective is there was a lot of talk through the COVID time about falling off a fiscal cliff and zombie firms, and I guess talking through, I guess, the quality of customers that the recruitment businesses are dealing with. We've seen very, very negligible bad debts over the time. Again, I guess probably touching on Cameron's point, the economy's been flush with cash, not just recruitment businesses requiring less cash over the time with the extra stimulus packages and I guess deferrals from ATO and banks, but also customers paying their invoices a lot quicker has been definitely an interesting phenomenon over the course of the COVID period. I guess over recent times, those stimulus packages have fallen away, and that's the time when we were expecting, I guess, the fiscal cliff to take shape. But we've still only seen just a small number of bad debts across the thousands of customers that our clients are servicing. So look, it's probably a bit of a hidden beast. I wouldn't say we're past it. I think it's beware and be very careful about, I guess, the customers you're dealing with, and definitely consider some sort of protection on the bad debt front.
Excellent, Danny. Thank you very much. And looking forward to an update on what happens further on down the track, because you're going to get some very early indicators there, no doubt.
Definitely.
Thank you, Danny. Now, Michael Yarrow, over to you.
Thanks, Tony, for having me and having us. It's always great to be a part of this. Now, so to give a bit of background, for those who I've met, I'm Michael Yarrow. I am the MD of DigitPro. So we're kind of like a back office, sort of an accounting firm, but we're based very, very promoted on technology. So we just help people work out their KPIs, and we specialize in the recruitment industry. And we've probably got, around all of Australia. So we're just kind of like servicing that kind of industry, but we work in all different other industries as well. So when I come to the economy, because I kind of like want to give it on I'm working on a ground level view, so I can kind of give you an approach from there. But effectively, across Australia, we deal with retail, professional services, hospo, and manufacturing and healthcare. And really, depending on what industry you were in at any particular point in time, some have done the best they've ever done for the past 5 years. And some that are basically, if they're retail and hospo, then they effectively went into hibernation mode. Online retail was up. Essential services, while they got busier, they didn't have a decline. They got busier, but they didn't actually make any more money. And obviously, hospo and entertainment, they're the ones that suffered the most. Now, I think so those in those industries that actually suffered, they basically would end up, sort of accrue all this debt. And so there's certain sort of provisions out there, like there's tenancy schemes that are out there that are basically holding people back from getting kicked out of their premises. So what I'm actually thinking is what's eventually going to happen is that, come January, there are people that are effectively have been accruing all this ATO debt and other debt, and then they're just waiting to actually roll up. But certain, like say, landlords are actually holding off doing it because they actually don't want to look bad to be folding people up in this economy. So they're going to wait till a period of time. And I expect that there's going to be a lot of businesses that actually are that are going to fail. And that are effectively deferring their debt, deferring their ATO, and it's eventually going to come to a head. So I think that, again, it's like there's a hidden component of it, and some people are able to push out because of the government support. But, in the long term, I'll be very interested to see some of these businesses that are basically just kind of like in a false economy and eventually going to close up. So that's kind of like how I feel the economy is going to go. But in terms of recruitment, everyone said the same thing: business is up. Across the board, finding jobs, couldn't be easier. There are jobs available, but a lack of talent. Now, the lack of talent, which in my opinion is to do with the certain international people have effectively been kicked out of the country. They've been on partner visas. I've seen personally that certain people's visas were cancelled because they were on a student and partner visa. The student got cancelled, therefore the partner got cancelled. They have to go back. No international travel. And also the government are giving these lovely disaster payments, these COVID disaster payments that are worth $39,000 per year for people to sit at home and deal with that. So and as well as probably about 3 years ago, they shortened the list of eligible visas. So the amount of skilled visa migrant immigration can't come through. All of this compounding is the candidate shortage. And the other thing that I've been thinking about in the recruitment industry is the thing called the Great Resignation that's happening in the US, where I think it's going to eventually echo in Australia, where basically people are rethinking their position in lives. And so people have been stuck in the same sort of job for a period of time, and they're not actually happy, are going to start moving around. So we're going to see a lot of movement. And this is probably a time to capitalize for those people, like people who have never moved their position and now more eligible, to move, and they're kind of like mentally exhausted from their position. So mental health is really important. This is a time for potentially the recruitment industry to capitalize and actually, like already what they're going through, there's businesses up, and I think it's even going to get better. So, yeah.
Very good, Michael. You hit on some great points there. Thank you very much. And Colin, you're up next, lucky last. And I'm sure there's still some areas for you to comment on because your business is really coming from a completely different perspective yet again, and really very keen to hear from your perspective of what's happening in the economy and also in your business. Colin, over to you.
Tony, thanks for having us. I've got nothing to add. I think everyone's said exactly how it is on the tin. No, I mean, honestly, I agree with all the comments there. And yeah, we do see, I suppose, firsthand from a number of different recruitment companies across the industry through New Zealand and Australia, given that we deal in the IT space. I've got comments on the economy, but they're personal comments and I'll keep them to myself. I think from an industry perspective, it's really been an interesting time for Ayers ourselves. Not only do we deal in the IT sector, the payroll sector, we also specialise, or used to, up until now again, the migration side of things. And, you know, if I take ourselves back to when COVID first hit Australia, I think there was a lot of knee-jerk reactions from a lot of people. We didn't know what it was across the world. And yeah, we definitely saw a dip in the market. There was definitely people that took a knee-jerk reaction, switched off a number of contractors. But to me, from an industry perspective, it wasn't as bad as what I initially thought what it would be. So if I go back to that period of time, leading up to the Christmas period, we saw, and it was always going to be the case, I think, because there was a lot of stressed out people. There was a lot of extra work going on and people were just trying to adjust from working from home. And there was a lot of time taken off over that Christmas period. So for us as an industry, in terms of the payroll, we saw a decline over that Christmas New Year period. And it always happens, it really does. If a contractor doesn't work, they don't get paid. But there did seem to be a larger Christmas shutdown. I foresee that may happen again this time round, given there's been lockdowns. We did see a bit of a lull. So from that period of time, from January all the way up to pretty much now, we've seen a fairly big increase. There was a lull in the market for us, and a contractor perspective does tend to give us a good, I suppose, dynamic in the wind. But there was a lull about 2 months ago, and I think that may have been because of an uncertain time with how long was this lockdown going to go on for. And all of a sudden, we've now got the confidence back. People have gone back to the pub. People have got a smile on their face. So yeah, we've definitely seen an upward trend. And I joke about the migration side of things.
Colin, I think you went on mute.
Sorry, thank you. Yeah, there's definitely a skill shortage. And we're now starting to see over the last couple of months, there's a lot more inquiry about how we can get skilled migration back into the country. I think immigration have got to speed themselves up on that side of things because they've shut a lot of things down. It will come, but yeah, it's for me, and I think for the whole industry. There's definitely a lot more confidence, and I think yeah, it's been a hard time for everybody. But I think there's some rosy, there's some nice sunny clouds I think ahead, and there have been for a number of months.
No, you're on mute, Tony.
Sorry. So, Colin, we'll pick your brains a bit later on about what's going to happen as far as migration goes, and once people have changed jobs, and what sort of flows are going to be coming in and out of our country, because that's going to be really interesting as well. So, so what I'm going to do, Martin, back to you. We'll combine our next two questions, which are insights into strategies used by some of your customers without obviously identifying them, but some of the things that leading recruitment firms are doing in this marketplace, and any general ideas that you might have from your perspective on what recruitment companies can be doing in this current market, given the state of the economy and the state of the recruitment industry.
Yeah, thanks for that, Tony. And as I was hearing all the great different intros from all the other guests, I realized I don't think I introduced myself. So my name is Martin. I'm the CEO of JobAdder, and JobAdder is recruitment software, in case you guys didn't know. So, but just to answer a question, yeah, a few things, right? So it's actually been very interesting times around this, and I think that, and it goes back to what I was saying in terms of the challenges are really around sourcing quality candidates, really filling those jobs. as we've seen the applications per jobs go down quite a bit, and even some pressure on those days to place have gone up more and more, particularly on the permanent side. And so some of the better recruitment firms, one of the things that we're seeing is essentially a hybrid approach to talent sourcing. So what you're doing is you're putting a lot more emphasis on talent pooling, leveraging your database, your network as much as possible, and doing as well proactive searching, right? Because you're just not getting the applications that are coming through typically through the job boards that you'd have in the past. And it's still, I think probably everyone here is either nodding or doing some of that. It's interesting though, even we still look at our internal metrics, the level of overall engagement that we have in some of these features when it comes to actually leveraging your database and working with a candidate tab, et cetera, and reaching out using the CRM capabilities to reach out to candidates and to bolster your own network. Those engagement levels still are probably below like what they should be in terms of the overall usage of the right kind of technologies and maybe the processes to do that. Perhaps it's just because a lot of consultants are just trying to keep up and not spending maybe taking an extra time to invest in that. We've also rolled out 2 integrations just in the last few months that helps really supercharge that. Both integrations on the Seek side with Sync, so their Talent Search Connect. So you're sort of able to leverage their database, candidate database, and get all the information be shared across into the ATS. And a similar integration with LinkedIn for the Recruiter System Connect. And I think those have been taken up really successfully and lots of good positive feedback, because that is supercharging your ability to be able to enrich your overall network in your database. So that's one big area. The other, and I think to sort of combine the 2 different questions is, I was actually talking to a managing partner, one of the top search firms just a few days ago, and it's really about their approach to business development. And so I think the best recruiting firms are staying on top of the current assignments and jobs they have at the moment. But how are they being smart about going after companies who are really in need of support in a very smart, strategic way, and where they can actually add value? Because being in this business for 25 years, like he was, of course, this may be great right now, but there's always a flip side to this. And so when there is going to be a downturn, there always will be some kind of downturn, whether it be 6 months, 18 months, 24 months, however long it is. It's important to spend that time, particularly the higher up you are, to develop that business development pipeline, and going after particularly the companies who, like JobAdder, us as well, who's hiring quite a bit, who need that extra help and are willing to look at potentially candidates that they haven't been able to find already. So those are probably the 2 big areas I think that some of the top recruitment firms are doing.
Oh, really good, Martin. Thank you very much. Cameron, would you like to add to that, please?
Sure. No. So I think some of the things that I'm seeing people and leading off some of those comments before, I think potentially we'll see a big change in that a lot of the workforce is saying that they don't necessarily want a 9-to-5 job and they want flexibility. I think where we're going to see that is that potentially people will want a contracting role. They'll want something a bit more flexible. And I think that's an opportunity for recruitment firms to focus that attention on and push their contracting or temp business. Because overall financially, we see when we help clients sell their businesses that potentially that recruitment temp part of the business is going to be worth a lot more than the perm. And so if you can build that up, that there's a couple of benefits. One is that you can potentially cover your fixed costs per month. So you can stand there at the start of the month and go, well, 75% of my fixed costs are covered because I know I've got this contracting book that's coming along. But then also, if you're looking at potentially selling your business in the future, you're going to get a much better valuation if you've got a much greater focus on that contracting book, which makes sense because someone buying then has that stability of the income and they know it's there, where perm can be potentially a bit up and down depending on, the quality and the efforts of your consultants at the time. So that's probably one. And the second one, I'd probably say some advice to people in terms of looking at their performance is take the time to spend some time working on the business. So sit down with either your advisors or your senior leadership team and work on that strategy stuff. What do we want the business to look like in the future? What do the sales look like? What are the number of staff the types of customers, profitability. And if you haven't done it before, take the opportunity to maybe go on a strategic retreat. So take, if it's just you and another owner maybe, or your senior leadership team, it doesn't need to be 10 people. It could be 2 or 3, and just go away for a couple of days. So just go somewhere out of the CBD to a different location, stay overnight, and really just spend that time looking at why we're here, what's the purpose of the business, and what do we want to achieve. We see a lot of business owners that are doing really well, but they're not necessarily looking that forward thinking and saying, well, what stuff should we be doing? And part of that is attending some, webinars like this, where you can learn new things, and then maybe take some of those learnings and then actually say, well, how do we put them into practice, and spend that time devoting all on that rather than just doing the day-to-day, type stuff. And I think the other quick one would be understand your KPIs and particularly your leading indicators. So not just, this is how much profit I made last month, but, how many calls are some of my staff doing? What data can I get out of JobAdder that gives me information as to what my sales or what my results will be like in 2 months' time? And if some of that data doesn't look the way I want it to look, well, then I can, potentially look at changing or performance managing the business so that we do get the outcomes that we want. So yeah, that's my suggestions there, Tony.
Oh, excellent advice. Thank you, Cameron. Danny, you still there? Over to you, please.
Certainly am. Thanks, Tony. Look, there's a lot of talk about, I guess, the opportunity in growing temp businesses, and we're obviously seeing that, as I mentioned, 100% growth year on year. We've got a lot of clients who are entering or growing temp sides to their business, and I guess what we're seeing being done successfully is where they're automating that tech stack, and I guess carrying on from Martin's approach to, I guess, augmenting or building out your tech stack to build out functionality and efficiencies. Certainly in the back end, automating your timesheets with electronic timesheets, and I guess your flow through with your tech stack is really working well. And a lot of the early stage or younger clients, it's easier for them to embrace, but we're certainly seeing that playing out effectively and working really well. I guess the other side is as you grow a temp business, obviously there's a cash flow element to that. You got to pay your payroll before you get paid. Just be mindful of that, and obviously those who are growing quite quickly need to put plans in place to get that, I guess, functionality or structure in place early before it's too late. And I guess at the end of the day, as you're growing sales, and we're talking a lot about the front end opportunity, you got to make sure you get paid too. And I sort of gave the undertone of be careful of who you're dealing with. I guess when COVID hit, your bad debt risk was pretty easy to pick. You knew not to deal with hospitality pretty quickly. Nowadays, it's a little bit more grey. You're not quite sure where the holes in the economy or the cash flows are going to be. So you don't want to give your customers any opportunity to get out of paying your invoices. You want to make sure that your terms of business and your sign-off processes are really tight, because any business who's a little bit cash flow strapped is going to take any opportunity they possibly can to dispute paying your invoice. So strongly recommend put in process or improve process where we can to ensure that all your invoices that you're raising are fully legally enforceable and will stand up very nicely in a court of law. So they're probably the main ones, Tony.
No, really good, Danny. And obviously jump on any slow payers as soon as possible before it does blow out too much. Yeah. I think that's great, because often we feel very, everything's ticking along well and we don't really worry about it as much. Yeah. No, in this market anyway. So thank you. Over to you, Michael.
Thanks, Tony. So I think part of, it's been great to hear all the other guys' opinions for it, because that's always a great thing. I think that what I've seen kind of like the leading firms doing to basically boost their performance is they're kind of like making sure that they're training their staff, keeping track of their KPIs, and the really good ones know every single thing that their staff members do on a day-to-day basis. They're keeping track of a weekly, sort of KPI spreadsheet. JobAdder is fantastic at that. It keeps track of all their calls, all their stats, and then you can tabulate them and actually look at them over a period of time. But there are other ways, not just actually looking at the dollar value of how much they're bringing in, because you can work around how to even train and develop them to actually start hitting their numbers better. The other leading firms, they're cutting unnecessary spend, which I'll talk about later, but effectively, looking at what's necessary and what's not necessary in this climate. I think a lot of the things are becoming more acceptable to actually cheap out on certain things, like not having a bigger office. So they're looking at what is unnecessary spend, whereas previously they would just kind of like look at an expense and say, all right, sweet, I spent that last year, therefore I'm going to spend exactly the same amount this year. They're looking at all the technology, as Danny and Cameron said, like working out the automation is everything. As soon as you add a manual aspect to what you're doing, there's possibilities for error, and you end up spending a lot more time on it. Look at the best technology, keeping up with that, and looking at the short term, it might be a short term investment for a longer term gain, because then you can eventually scale. So all of that's really good. Flexibility with staff. So your ability, staff are now going to want to work part-time, or they might want to work only a certain days in the office, which is absolutely fine. And we're going to have to adapt to that. And we might lose a bit of efficiency, but in the longer game thing, it's actually worth it. They are also keeping track of a really strong management team. So they're always constantly in discussion so that they're ready to move. So if you're not constantly talking to your management team, then you're not as fluid with how you run your business. And the other leading firms do is they operate with a purpose. They have a goal. They set the goal. They decide what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And so when they do that, then it becomes really clear when you are hitting or not hitting your targets. So, yeah.
Thank you, Michael. Very good. I started taking notes, but there's so many good ideas I can't keep up. So all of us might need to review the recording afterwards. So thanks, Michael. Excellent ideas. And Colin, over to you, please.
Again, agree with everything there. I think two major ones for me, and is seeing what people have done within the marketing world. We all go on LinkedIn. I think it's become a lot more personalised to the company and to the individual. And I smile when I say it, when I've got my West Ham jerseys and dartboard at the back. We've entered other people's lives. And I mean, what worries me is that we go back to all this hustle bustle. And I like what some of the bigger organisations have done, have made it more personal. That's one big thing. And I think the other major one is we, or you, everyone around the table, we're in a recruitment industry. We talk about people. Yeah, it's great to have a good tech stack. We talk about debt, but I've always said it's people that have got us through this with good tech. It's people that press buttons. And I think one of the major ones for me personally in our company and some of the organisations is they've really looked after their staff. If you haven't, get doing it now. And also look at the other good guys. They've looked really after the mental health of individuals. I think everybody around the table, around the world, has super struggled at periods of time. Others more than some more than others. But some of those good companies, the strategies they put behind to look after mental health. Some people's mental health is going crazy now. And yes, we look at Melbourne. You've been in a lockdown for far longer than Sydney, but all of a sudden we're going to go back into this bit of normality where we're going to sit on a train with other people. We're going to sit in traffic, and we've got to deal with that again. I'm enjoying it, but other people are going to go through a bit of anxiety. And I think those companies that have really looked after mental health, I think that should be one of the highest things on your list if you haven't. Make it a priority, because I think one of the things we talk about, I think Michael mentioned it, the big resignation. It's coming. If you haven't looked after your staff, let's do it now. And I think the other one we're going to look out for is look out for the big holiday. There's not many people that have been very far, and let's look in a month's time, 2 months' time, 6 months' time. Try and look that far in advance, because there's all those things to come. And I think there's quite a lot of anxiety with people about, are you going to force me back 5 days a week? If I go back 2 days a week, what does that mean if my child's ill or I need to rush off to the dentist? And I think it's adaptability and flexibility that some of those leading firms have already done. but look ahead as to what's coming. But yeah, people have definitely they should be really high up there on the priority, given the fact you're recruiting for businesses. Look after your own internally, and I think it will take care of itself.
Yeah, no, and recruitment is a people business for sure. Colin, thank you. You've led us nicely into our second to last subject matter, if you like, and that is dealing better with the COVID environment, which has changed so much even since we started promoting this particular captain's table meeting, and the work from home environment. We've got cities coming out of lockdowns and people trickling back to offices and all that sort of stuff. While we've got you, Colin, is there anything more you want to add? Because you covered some of what we need to cover around, what you think firms can be doing even better to deal with this current environment.
How long have you got?
You have got 2 minutes.
No. Yeah, I mean, to add to that, it's interesting to know that some companies are going to go back 5 days a week, and I'll be interested to see what happens with regards to that big resignation. I think my opinion, take it for what it is. We've got to be really flexible. We really have. People have worked from home. Some people have worked better than others, and for me, it was having a good set of values in the business and adhering to those. We might have had to be a little bit flexible with some, but yeah, I think it's just being flexible and adaptable, because, and then I mentioned this probably about 6 months ago on one of these presentations, having a plan A and a plan B. Now, we don't know what's going to happen again. A local school recently opened up, they got locked down again, they've reopened. Is that going to happen in our own businesses? I've got an opinion that, okay, we might all get COVID one day, but if you've had the jab, then I'm pretty sure we're going to be okay. But are you going to have to lock the building down? And what is that going to mean? But when I say plan A and plan B, we've already gone back to the office 3 weeks ago. Not everybody, and I won't force everyone back. And it's been interesting to see how many people want to come back because they've been locked in a bedroom, in a one-bedroom apartment or their house. So yeah, it's the plan A and plan B. I've noticed that we rob Peter to pay Paul. And what I mean by that is rob from the office to utilise our home office. But if you are going to go back and be flexible at the home office and business office, make sure that you've got pretty much identical situations to make it really, really streamlined for your employees. So yeah, that's my
that's good. Excellent, Colin. Thank you very much. We'll go in reverse order. So to you, Michael, your view on this, what are you doing with your team? And what's your view on better dealing with this current environment?
Yeah, so I think, the biggest issues that you have and the negatives of like not having people in the office is, one, it's difficult to build a culture. So if you're trying to build a really strong kind of like great culture, keep people happy, whatever, it's harder to build that culture when you're doing it through Zoom. That's naturally, so it's hard to impart your skills and value while you're doing it from a distance. The work is less efficient. I don't care what anyone tells me. It's sometimes easier to yell across the room and say, hey, what's this? Rather than putting it in an email. And then the other thing as well is it's harder to build that sort of connection, from a sales point of view and also with your team as well. So it's a little bit harder. So my particular team, so what we're doing is there's some people that have decided they live far away, and they've actually, now it's an opportunity for them to actually say to me, hey, you know what? I actually don't feel like coming in. I've got kids, I've got this, I've got that. I actually want to come in only part-time. But unfortunately, those are the guys that actually need to help develop the team. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to strategize that I'm going to do a 1 week, 2 days, the other week, 3 days to kind of like accommodate for that. Because if I don't, then they're just going to say to me, hey, you know what? It's not for me. So, and that's absolutely fine. And I don't expect, certain people will work harder, but then there's the contingent of people who actually hate working from a bedroom and are going to come into work every single day just because they like the environment. The positives, I guess, from that, for having people work at home is that your occupancy cost is less. So you might have required a 10-person office. Now you're only, because of the alternating weeks, it might only be a 5. So you're spending less on occupancy. you're not limited to the talent in your immediate vicinity. So look, outsourcing, that is an option. You know, there's no difference from someone working, you know, 5 days in an office in Victoria as opposed to someone working in the Philippines. So cheaper labor is an option from specifically admin point of view. And the other thing is travel costs are down. So effectively, you can now, you know, do more meetings. You can, you know, you're now not limited. You know, Captain Table is a great example. You can be wherever you are and tune into this meeting. So the opportunity is there, but then it's going to be the focus of keeping everyone mentally sane, that they're, you know, they're not working, you know, 10 hours a week, 10 hours a day, you know, trying to work it out. So mental health is going to be one of the big things, and take care of your employees. So yeah, so I think overall, it's just new. It's not good or better. It's just new.
Now, very good, Michael. Some excellent ideas there too. Thank you very much. Danny, you're next up.
Yeah, thanks, Tony. Look, I think the key, and it always has been, but I think more than ever, during and post-COVID, is empathy. Empathy across the board. Just understanding everybody you're dealing with, from staff to customers to suppliers to stakeholders. There's a massive undertone of what people are going through, Zoom burnout, you know, just this whole remote working. It's just all, it's just building burdens, you know, across the board. So, you know, you might have staff who have a bit, I wouldn't say altercation, but disagreement over a Zoom meeting or over email or over text or chat, whatever. What's sitting behind those conversations? You know, what are they going through? You know, you got early kids that, you know, fathers living with newborns who aren't used to that sort of environment. They might be a little bit snappy one day. Well, it's not the actual issue they're snappy with. They haven't slept for 3 days. So, you know, you got to take all that into account. So empathy is massive for us. Or I guess, you know, as service providers, it needs to be really important for all of us across the board. And I was going to sort of stretch that out, not just with staff and understanding, I guess, what they want and how they want to live their lives, and et cetera. You know, do they want just to come and go? Do they want to spend time at home? Do they want to get passionate about, you know, your vision and values and direction of the business? You know, really understand what's true to them and why they're coming to work. And it's all part of how do you get to keep them, where you got to give them what they want. But also empathy with your customers. And I guess I'm coming back to, a topic we've talked about already, in that understanding your customers, understanding their current situation, understanding their capability to pay. There's a real big mindset shift to, you know, past experience. You used to be able to predict future experience, but you can't judge future performance of a business based on how they performed over COVID when the economy was flush with cash. So you used to be able to run credit reports on retrospective credit history and say, yeah, they've had a good history, they'll be fine. Well, that's not necessarily the case. You need to drill deeper. You need to look forward. You need to understand where they're at, understand their supply chain, get a real sort of feel for where they're at and who they're dealing with, and where they're moving forward to. So what industry they're in and all that. So for me, yeah, as I say, empathy across the board in every possible way in a much deeper level.
I like it, Danny. Thank you very much. All right, quickly moving to Cameron now. Cameron, you're a bigger organisation. Keen for your thoughts.
Yeah, so I don't have the answers. I've got ideas, and I think we're working through it all ourselves in terms of what that future looks like. And I think we've all got to probably accept as business owners that the hybrid work arrangement is here to stay. I think there are some people that are talking about getting back into the office 5 days a week, but I think that will probably be the lower number of businesses. I think touching on the mental health thing, I think continuing to do one-on-ones with your team members, I think will be important. I mean, a lot of us have done that over the period when we've been working remotely, but as we move back in, I don't think this is going to be we're back in the office. So I'm now 100% back to what I was before, where I was before. I think that's going to be a slow burn. Some of my sort of suggestions on internal meetings is that I think probably the females will probably take advantage of the flexible working because they tend to take the heavy load in terms of kids. And I think with internal meetings, you need to acknowledge that and probably be in a position where all internal meetings, if there's someone working remotely that particular day, it's held on Zoom. There's not a situation where you're in the boardroom and you've got 8 people and then there's one person on Zoom. I think that person on Zoom is then going to potentially, miss out on those interactions. So I think you've either got to all be in the business all physical together, or be all on Zoom. But then acknowledge the fact that, if you're not going to be there, you're going to miss out on some of those relationship, stuff. And potentially to counteract that, look at some training for some people, for your team members, on how they can sort of interact and build relationships with people more purposefully when they're not physically together. So that's some of my ideas.
No, very good, Cameron. Great ideas. Very good. Thank you, Martin. You're the last on this topic. Keen to hear what you're doing and your experiences with your team, which is quite large also.
Yeah, and it's good to go last. You get to see how hard it is to actually add additional value after so many great contributions across the board. Their work, all of it really resonated with me. I think the things that Colin was saying at the beginning really, landed well. And Danny, your point about empathy, I think resonates really, really deeply with us at JobAdder. It's because I joined the company about just over a year ago, almost a year and a half. And that was a big thing that we wanted to do, is just to be able to crystallize really sort of the values that we had, like, what is our culture? There's so many great things about it, but how do we actually distill that into something that is very meaningful? We can communicate and reinforce in how we do everything, like how we hire, how we develop our people, all of that, right? So, and the number one value that we have 4 values. The number one, probably the most foundational value, is empathy. And I think there's no better timing than now. It's an everlasting value, but that can just pay off in so many different ways. And we've been challenged in how we actually do that now, as we work more remotely, because we've been growing like mad. We've been when I started, there was about 90 of us, and now there's over 200, and that's global as well. So I joined the company, more or less remotely, where not many people were in the office. I joined last July. We've had now over half the company joined since the lockdowns, and a lot of them, whether it be here locally, Sydney, or in the UK or North America, they've never known an office environment. They've never had those connections, with the other adders, and to be able to, I think this was pointed out before, to be able to continue to develop and really tap into the awesome culture that we've got. So that's a big concern for me. Like, how do we actually manage that? And how do we, now that we're opening up here in Sydney, how do we get more and more people back into the office to create those connections, but not be very sensitive to their needs and what they want? And there is a divide right now. There's a divide between what executives want and then what employees want, and that's going to unsustainable divide unless that's actually reconciled. So what we've done, and again, we don't have all the answers. I'm learning as much as I can from other CEOs, hearing from the other guys here. I think is very helpful too. What we've tried to do is adopt a remote first approach to everything. So what does remote first mean? It doesn't mean remote only, or like we're only doing remote. It means that when we think about how to actually, whether it be hiring, onboarding, engagement, operations, et cetera, we think, how do we actually do this in a really good way, successfully way, remotely, right? And then you can then back into how does that work in a hybrid or sort of like, in-person approach, right? Because if you don't think about that first, at least for us, then those people who do want to work remotely, internationally, or, from home here in Sydney, they're going to feel left out and they're going to want to go somewhere else. So I think that's probably the big thing. I know I'm just kind of adding a little bit more of the same on top of what was already said. But I think that is really top of mind for me. And I think if the particularly recruitment firms here, can get ahead of this and get it right and do those things, companies like that are hiring like ours, we're looking for answers too, right? So that's where you become the advisor to those companies as well. Everyone's trying to figure this out together. And the more, examples I hear from, our partners or from recruitment agencies, et cetera, who have thought through this and actually whether they're doing it themselves or whether they're serving other companies that are doing things a bit differently, more progressively, the better also, I think, we all here will be, going forward.
No, well said, Martin. Really good. And Martin, while we've still got you, I think it's a good time, quick summary from everybody then on the recruitment industry going forward. What is it going to look like? Those of you that are still with us, please hang in for a few more minutes for the summation. So much good content here. Martin, going forward for the recruitment industry then, given everything that's been said, your view?
Yeah, I think that they always say that the best predictor of future results is looking at the sort of the recent trends or the past results. And I think we're going to see more of the same. So increasing, job creation and demand on the labor side, on the hiring side. There is going to be more and more turnover. We talked about the Great Resignation, that is happening, or at least in terms of people are reevaluating, et cetera, which will create, some more attrition and more instability in the workforce. So how companies are navigating that and getting ahead of it and thinking about how to, enrich their overall culture and think about remote first would be really important. So I think we're going to see probably at least 6 to 12 months, a lot of similar trends persist. I wish I had a crystal ball. I don't exactly know from quarter to quarter, but I think we're going to see more of the same. I think it will also be interesting to see what happens here in Australia. Sydney now coming out of course, out of lockdown. Melbourne coming out. School, kids going back to school. We're seeing this now in the UK, where they've, probably a few months ahead with vaccinations, et cetera, and then 40,000 new cases per day or whatever it may be. Still, reluctant to go back into lockdown. So I think always looking at other countries that are probably a couple months ahead in terms of that life cycle will also be a good indicator of what happens here.
No, really good, Martin. Thank you, and thanks for all your great comments so far. Cameron, over to you, summation, please.
So I think the next 12 months are going to be very, very strong. I think we're going to see a continuation of the strong trading, but I think it's even going to increase to a greater level. So as some of the businesses are coming out of lockdown in New South Wales and Victoria, I think they're going to be looking at hiring. Most clients I'm talking to are saying that they would love to hire more people if they could. The demand for their services is increasing. So I think the challenge is going to be, do you turn work away as a recruitment business, or do you skill up and actually start sort of employing more people to help in your business? And where we're seeing people do that well is where they're not getting, traditionally a lot of recruiters came from the UK or from overseas countries. We're not going to see that in the next 6 to 12 months. It's going to start probably in the middle of next year. Some sort of junior people that have got experience in your, niche industry that you're targeting, have got sales experience, and potentially bring them on, because that's probably the only way that you're really going to be able to tackle that demand. So yeah, I think more of the same, and looking forward to seeing what transpires. And I'm happy to talk through if people want to continue the conversation. I've got a QR code for LinkedIn on my background. Happy to chat to people afterwards too. So thanks.
No, good. Thanks a lot, Cameron. And we'll be sending all the speaker contact details to everybody. And that's a very cutting edge piece of technology you have there. Danny, over to you.
Look, similarly, we're equally as pumped about the future of the industry. All stars are aligning beautifully at the moment. We're all sort of hopefully coming out of COVID. Everyone's optimistic about where the economy is going, but all the growing businesses that all the surveys are saying are all looking to hire in the next 12 months. Can't find people, so they need recruiters. So massive opportunity for the recruitment industry. We're really pumped about it.
No, I totally agree. Thanks, Danny. Very good. Michael.
Great. So my thoughts are that eventually, some of these businesses that are waiting to fail will happen in probably the next, I would say 6 months. So therefore, you've probably got a lot more candidates that might actually be needing new jobs. So that will rise. The internationals are going to come in because they're going to now open that up, and they're probably going to be slowly filtering back in, and the immigration will start again. So I think that with the jobs, the Great Resignation, everything, the actual recruitment industry will probably do better as a result, as opposed to some industries that are actually going to go not so well. And I think but either way, the way to prepare for it is that you need to know your numbers. Gut feeling isn't good enough. You need to know, and you need to make decisions quicker. And the other thing is that I would say that people are your greatest asset. For smaller firms, it's like your service providers. For larger firms, it's their staff and service providers. But, to be aware of mental health, ensure you're meeting the staff needs, because the actual cost of replacing staff and getting staff to train, all of that costs a whole bunch of money. I'm lucky enough that I have a small team that I can actually go to each individual person ask them how they're doing, making sure they're happy, making sure that I'm keeping their needs in check. So having that retention will help you and gear you towards actually doing well when the jobs open up and the candidates are actually there. So, and the other thing is that in any market, someone can make money. So you can be that person.
Very good, Michael. Thank you very much for that. And Colin, you have the last word.
Back to me. Again, same there, but I think, yeah, definitely a positive outlook from a business perspective, but using Martin's words and Danny's, empathetic and sensitive. Don't let that go, because it's not just about money in people's lives. It's people have gone through a lot, so make sure that's up there as a really high point. From an immigration perspective, immigration to us works both ways. We're keen to get people back into the country, but don't underestimate, and I used this expression the other day, Australia is a long way away on a sunny day. But when you're in lockdown, you might just find that it's a lot further away. And I think some people's emotions might just think, look, I need to go back home. They might be missing something. So be sensitive to that, because that might be coming. We've had a couple of staff that have struggled, and we've got one girl, fantastic for the whole period. She's admitted she's got some mental health issues and she wants to go back home to Sweden. Yeah, don't underestimate that, because I think immigration goes back that way too, as much as people might be looking at the Englands, the Irelands, the Americas to actually get away. There might just be people keen to get home and spend a bit more time than we think over there. So yeah, just look out for that.
Yeah, really good, Colin. Thank you very much. Well, we'd better finish up there. We probably don't have time for questions, but what I will do is I will send out all your contact details to everyone that registered today, and we had a big group of registrants. So, but thank you all collectively. A virtual round of applause to all of you. The content was absolutely sensational, and I want to do this every year. I really do, with the five of you, and hopefully we can do this again next year, because there was so much content there that I hope everyone that joined us today found very valuable. So thank you very much to our speakers, and thank you very much to our senior leaders and owners and directors that came to Captain's Table today. I really appreciate you being with us, and look forward to seeing you one more for the year, and also another 2 consultants table coming up. So thank you everyone for being here, and it couldn't have been a better session today. So thank you very much, everybody.